And welcome back to Corona Geek, here where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever, and today we're going to talk about protecting your source code, how to make sure that you're got a backup of things, and how to be able to experiment a little bit without having to worry about corrupting your source, your primary project. Chris Byerly, the developer of Coronium, a fantastic simple cloud platform, is going to walk us through that at some point and show us some of the things that we can use to do that. So thanks, Chris, for joining us today. Also joining us is Dr. Brian Burton. Hello, Doctor.
Hello.
Doctor. And also joining us is Kevin from the UK. Hey, Kevin.
Hiya.
And we have Chris here. I don't know Chris, but hey, thanks for joining us. Everybody is always welcome to join us here on the panel anytime. We are live every Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific. So if you want to join us, there's usually 10 spots, available on Google Hangout, and we try to fill as many of them as we can. But if you want to join us, hop on. We're always glad to have you. So let's go through some community announcements before we get into the Mercurial stuff, because we basically want to do the source code, we want to do a little bit of Apple talk, and then we want to have time for some community questions. But first, we want to get those announcements out there. And let's start off with the panel here. Does anybody on the panel have anything that they want to announce or talk about?
Well, there's a lot of excitement happening at a lot of school districts. Many of them are beginning to add mobile application development classes at the high school level, and I know that's generating a lot of interest in the use of Corona at the high school level. I've seen quite a few emails from teachers that have been assigned at the last minute the project of teaching this class. So if you are a teacher or you know a teacher that has to teach mobile application development, Corona is a great answer for the high school level student. Lua is an easy programming language to learn. They'll learn to program and make a mobile application at the same time. So I would highly recommend it as a resource.
Oh, well, excellent. Yeah, that's a great thing to note. Yeah, I forget about all the kids going back to school, but it's certainly a time for people to be looking into that. So good idea for sure.
And if there's teachers out there, drop me a line. I'll be happy to help you get started and point you in the right direction. Been doing this for a few years and have a little bit of experience with it. So.
Yeah, and your book is picked up by schools.
School districts all over the country, and even in the UK, and I think there's a couple in Australia using it as well. So, and it's larger and larger. I'm seeing more broadly. We seem to see, I look at trends from where's my book selling, which should also say, poor statistical analysis would say that that's also a place that Corona is being picked up. I'm seeing a surge in Hong Kong.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
interesting. I know. That
was very interesting. Yes.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of I guess Asian countries that use Corona, and it's big in Korea, and it's crazy. So yeah.
Vietnam, Hong Kong, China, Japan. Don't see quite as many sales in Japan, but that may be just simply a language barrier. I don't have the book translated to Japanese yet. So
oh, okay. And you say you use a resource to tell you where your books are being sold?
Well, I can just see the home country.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe there was a super secret website out there.
Of course, there's Google Analytics on websites and things like that show where people are visiting from. The Corona also seems to be popular in Vietnam.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of hits from Vietnam based upon Google Analytics. No, I don't know their home address or anything like that. There's not. I'm not the NSA or something like that. I just see country of origin based upon the IP address.
That's funny. So did you see an uptick after Flappy Birds went big? I mean, was there because
was an increase back during February, March, a slight uptick in, hey, if that can make it big, my idea can make it big as well.
Yeah, I would imagine that would drive some, especially in that region,
right.
Yeah.
And a word of caution for all those that are getting started in mobile application development: Flappy Bird had very few sales the first 10, 11 months it was out there. Then suddenly it went viral. So it's not that, oh, it's been out there 2 months for my app. I've only had a few hundred or a few thousand downloads. That's okay. Just keep promoting it. Keep letting people know that it's out there, and hopefully your app can go viral too.
Yeah. Did you see that? Speaking of which, did you see that Swingcopter?
Yes.
Is out. So the developer of Flappy Birds took Flappy Birds off the store and then came back with a version of it for Android. I mean, not Android, for Amazon Fire TV, and now he has basically published this Swingcopter. And I don't know if you guys have played this thing, but it's hard. It's harder.
It's basically the same mechanics though that he used in Flappy Bird.
It's hard,
you
though.
just simply change the direction.
Yeah.
The orientation of movement. And
so you say that though, but there's a tipping point. So like before, you had to you tapped and he went up and then went down and up and down.
Right.
And here though, you have to go left or right, and
yes.
then if you once you go too far left, then it falls over to the left, and then you have to tap back right, and so you fall. So it's a very precise game. I couldn't get past the first. I couldn't get a 1 on the game. I couldn't get 1.
On Flappy Birds, I gave up at 2. So.
Yeah. Well, I gave it to my son, my 14-year-old. He was able to get to 2, and then he gave it to his friend, who was really good at Flappy Birds, and he was immediately able to go to 25, which I don't understand how that. My reaction to that was that's photoshopped. But yeah, it's a very, very hard game, and but yeah, the author of that game has picked up a lot of steam from his previous success. But yeah, you're right. It took a while before it even.
The oft-quoted statistic that is that usually it takes 20 applications before you're going to have a success.
Well,
and I don't know how many he had done prior to Flappy Birds and the Copter game, but the norm is 20 apps before you're going to start seeing success with your apps.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good
and
rule of
that's
thumb.
not junky apps. That's not a Hello World published. That's doing an app and getting it out there. This is an art and a science, and we got to learn the process of what's going to sell and good user interface and you take my classes and shorten that process hopefully. But
yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Or read my book and it shortens the process.
I know that the book for sure shortens the process because there's been several people even here on this panel who have said that your books helped them get started and kind of accelerate that learning pace because it's most of the information's out there. It's just kind of all over the place.
Right.
And you have something that's put together in a beginning to end sort of fashion and can walk you through. So that's always a great resource.
That was the goal.
That's the goal. Anybody else got anything they want to share? Any announcements or anything?
Yeah, I've got like I said before, I've got a little new game out. It's a luck-based game, so you have 3 doors where you have to pick one every single time. And behind one of the other doors, there's fire. So it's basically luck. So pick a door, pick a door, pick a door, fire. So you can download that now on iTunes and Android, Google Play.
What's the name of it again?
Open Doors.
Open Doors.
So Open Doors with an S on the end. But I'll put a link in the chat.
There you go. Everybody talks about ASO for.
No, that's
not it.
No,
Open Door with an S.
Yeah, it's Open Doors with a space. I think it's third in the list now or something.
So if you go to the Apple Store.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, let me see. You said you put a link in the chat. Let me see if I can find it here. Hold on.
Yeah, that's the Play Store. Let me just.
Got it. Hold on. Got it.
The iOS.
There we go. So it's on Google Play and it's on iOS.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So
let
if
me
you're
just
looking
grab the
for
iOS link for you.
some fun to experiment with, there's Open Doors. And you said you have to pick. You just randomly pick doors, or is there like a puzzle to it, or what's the?
No, there's no puzzle. It's basically luck. Yeah. It's a map random that selects one of the doors every single time.
Nice. So you're always like, I can.
Yeah.
It's this one. Oh, I blew up.
Yeah. But it's quite difficult to get a high score. I've got about 13, and I can't get any higher than that. So it's
well,
yeah, fun.
there you go. I mean, the Flappy Birds. I would think automatically that something like that would A, be too simple, and B, be too hard. And I'm continually surprised at how many people like those types of things. Because it's so simple, it's easy to understand. It's the rules aren't complicated, and because it's hard, then you have a sense of accomplishment when you get a 12 or a 13 or a 15 or a 25, and your friends only got 2. So, it's amazing, and so good for you putting that out there. That goes back to what Dr. Burton was talking about just a moment ago. Was you're experimenting with UI, you're experimenting with the mechanics, and I like that kind of stuff. I particularly enjoy those types. So there you go, Open Doors. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes for sure. Thanks for sharing.
No problem.
Anybody else got anything they want to share?
Oh yeah, I've got the sent that 2 weeks to you, 2 weeks ago to you. I've got that little micro blog post about how to swap between app providers in your game in a 50-50 distribution.
Okay.
So maybe put a little note in the about that as well.
Okay. Did you put that? Yeah. If you'll put a link in the chat, that'll help me out. Awesome.
Hold on a sec.
Awesome. And when did you publish Open Doors?
I think 2 weeks ago, a week ago. Well, yeah, 2 weeks ago on Android, I think, and then iOS is taking a bit longer because they have to go through the whole review process. Okay,
because I'm just curious as to when it's going to show up in in Google search, because
I think I made a mistake by choosing that name, to be honest, because there are a lot of apps with a similar type name.
Yeah. Well, it's just generally I go when I'm searching for apps. I go to Google. I put in name of the app or the keywords that I'm looking for, and then I do iOS.
Yeah.
And or Android, and it usually comes up pretty close to the top.
Well, yeah, with my other apps, it's mostly within 2 or 3 days when it's actually indexed by Google if you search on a particular name. But like I said, there are a lot of apps out there that use the word open and doors, and it screws up the ranking system a bit.
Gotcha. Kind of dilutes it, makes it harder. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll definitely include a link to that. So thanks again. So anybody else got anything you want to share? Greg, how's the comic book coming?
I'm at 71 comics. I'm just wrapping up the 72nd comic. So I think the iBook's about at 30 pages, and the print book will be around 60-some right now.
Okay. Awesome. So, yeah, if you guys haven't been following Greg's work, go over to Mandy Bear Books, and he's got his whole comic strip over there. And he puts it out on a daily basis. And it's fantastic. Let me pull this up so we can see it on the screen here. There we go. I mean, I don't see how you. It's amazing that you are doing these day by day.
Yeah, it's literally I just come up with it right as I'm drawing it.
Which is fantastic. I mean, because there's I don't know, the artwork is good. There's usually some sort of story that has to fit in 3 panels or 2 panels, depending on how you do it, and then you always seem to have an element of humor. There's always a joke in it, which to me I think would be the hardest part, is coming up with the funny bits. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. It's it just forces me to write 1 joke a day, which is difficult because I'm not a writer. I just want to force myself to also draw a day. So I just figure I can only get better and hopefully not worse the more I do it.
Gotcha. And I see you you updated your theme on your site.
Yeah, it looks like it kind of got messed up there. I'll have to check my HTML code. That's the thing, when you update it every day, there's lots of chances that you're going to screw up the HTML somewhere in there. But yeah, it also has trouble showing up on iPhones, so I'll have to look at that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I kind of like the new look though. I mean, what you're doing there seems like everything's keeping things fresh, keeps people interested. All right. Well, anybody else got anything they want to share?
Could you also put website on? What is the name of his website, please?
MattyBearBooks.com.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Well, if you guys didn't get a chance to see Corona Geek 104, definitely encourage you to go do that. You can find that on the Corona Labs blog, so coronalabs.com/blog. We talked about using Coronium Cloud for back-end game development, and Ed Marino, who is not with us today but was with us last week, he went through a whole example of what he was doing with his game, and it was fantastic. So if you get a chance, go back and check that out. We also talked about the sliding menu code. There's actually a tutorial for that on the blog as well, so go check that out. And that was just a good session all the way around. Also, if you haven't been over to Corona University, go over to coronalabs.com/university, and there is a whole list of guides, videos, and tutorials that are there for you. And we're continually adding videos to the library. So right now we're working on videos for physics joints. So if you want to do, if you want to add wheels, or if you want to create pulleys, or if you want to do all those types of things, we're creating videos show you how to do that as well.
And to tie into that, back in February I started working on a MOOC, massive open online course, and the MOOC is still up. It is still being added to, and we borrow heavily from the Corona University videos, organize them into lessons, and provide a nice systematic method for people to go through it. I'm using it with my freshman students this fall to help them get started with mobile app development. So this is a great way to get started with using Corona and doing a little bit of programming.
Excellent. Will you put a link to the MOOC in the chat
Sure.
for me? I know we've linked to it before, but it would be good to bring that back up to the top. I know there's definitely a community of people who out there who who like to do the online learning, and that's a good resource for sure. Also on the Corona Labs blog, I don't know if you guys have been following that along with that. There's also from the forums. There's a lot of that happens on a weekly basis. So basically, there's some conversation that's going on in the forum is pulled out and discussed and highlighted. So go check that out. And then if you haven't already, go check out the Understanding Android App Signing blog tutorial that was put out last week by Rob Miracle. Now we're not going to go through this today because it's pretty lengthy, but it's a good in-depth guide to creating the key stores, and being able to create everything you need for development and for publishing your app via Android. So if you thought working with iOS provisioning profiles was a pain, Android's not nearly as complicated, but there are some concepts there that are confusing, and this tutorial kind of takes you through all of the different bits and explains them and shows you what you need to do with them. Also, on the last couple of times that we were on, we had a few guests on the show who had put out some apps that I thought was interesting, so I thought we would highlight those again. One was called TWerf, and it's a kind of a crazy app where you get to take your pictures and then you get to kind of what I call decorate your face. So there's a whole bunch of images, hand-drawn images that are included in the app, and then you can take those almost like little post-it notes and stick them on your image and create a whole custom image with little text sayings and things like that, and then share those out with your friends. So it's kind of crazy. It's kind of fun. And if you get a chance, check it out. TWerf.
Are all the images pre-built, or do you draw your own? How does it work?
No, they're all pre-built. They come in the app, and apparently they're all hand drawn by an artist, that the developer was working with. And there's a bunch of them that come for free, and then there are in-app purchases if you want to get access to, I think it's like 2 or 3 pages worth of faces, but there's some crazy ones that you might want to get access to as well. That's kind of cool, yeah. And the artist definitely has a unique style, which makes it really fun. And then the other app we want to highlight is Social Poetry, and this app is basically, it tags into your Facebook profile, pulls out a list of words that you can use, and then you can either take pictures that on your camera roll or whatever, and you can overlay these almost like the little magnetic words, those little sets where you would create little ditties. You could do that here, and then you can share them out with your social network via Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And it's fun. I think it's pretty neat. You can create, like here's one where you've got just a background and it's nothing in particular. No, you could say whatever you want, right? It wouldn't really matter. And then over here, you can pick a picture and then you can come in and customize it. So it's kind of it's an interesting way, I think, to play with your images and make them more social. And it doesn't, the words that it pulls in from the social media, it pulls in from your Facebook timeline. You can also go in and add words. So it's got a bunch of word suggestions, I guess, based on what you've been talking about lately. And then if you want to go in and kind of put in your own words, you can do that as well, just in case you don't get the right mix. So that's kind of fun too. So Social Poetry, go check that out. We'll put a link in the show notes. And then Dr. Burton got mentioned over here on Game of Sutra. I think it was, I don't remember which episode it was. I had some notes on that. I forgot. But one of the previous episodes where we talked about COPA, Dr. Burton was talking about the fact that that the game development industry, the mobile development industry, has been wild west in the past, and then this is now maturing of the industry and having to do things like protecting children's privacy and user privacy and things like that were important. And so he got quoted over there in this article on Game of Sutra. So I thought that was pretty cool.
So did I. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I've been meaning to mention that for a couple of weeks now. I know that it happened a while back, but I just keep forgetting, and thought I would bring that up today. Also, over at Ragdog Studios, I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but they create templates. So there's complete templates that you can go over there. So if you basically want to do a reskin of a game, they do it with Corona SDK. So you can kind of go over there and buy something, reskin it, and publish it out. So I think it's a great way to kind of get up and running and get started and get something published, and also just if you just want to buy the code and look at how someone has put something together, see a good example of a project. And they bring together the graphics and the sound and the code and everything together. So right now they've got a new one out called Swipe Arrows. There's, again, we were talking about earlier about simple mechanics and simple interface. This one is basically you swipe on the arrows, so you're swiping up, down, left, or right, and you have to do it in the right combination as the arrows come through, or your turn is over. So that's a pretty popular thing going on right now. Missing white squares and swiping in right directions and stuff like that. And then they also have a Swingcopter template. We were talking about that earlier. So if you're interested in getting rejected by Apple or Google Play, you could probably just buy this and submit it as is. But if you're interested in the mechanics and you wanted to see how it was all put together, I would highly recommend it. It's something that would probably be a better use of your time. But anyway, Ragdog Studios, those guys have got some great stuff. Go check them out. And I think if you become a member of their, join their membership, I think you save 25% off of their templates and stuff like that. So that might be a good thing for you as well. All right, I think that's enough jibber jatter for right now. We need to get on to the source control business because Chris here is like I said at the top of the show, he is the developer of Coronium, where it's you can basically set up a back-end server to match your application. Use everything's written in Lua. So if you want to create a back-end cloud for your app, you can use Coronium. It's all open source, and Chris has done a fantastic job of developing this thing out over multiple versions. I think you're kind of approaching 2.0 here pretty soon, and I'm assuming, Chris, you use a source control system to manage all that.
Absolutely.
So tell us all about it. What do we need to know? I know we were going to talk about Mercurial, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna just let me just get my screen share on here. Let's see here.
So out of the panel here, is it who all uses source control? Sergey, definitely. Dr. Burton, okay. I have a version of I use source control intermittently, which is not a good policy.
Yeah, it's definitely something you got to kind of like work into your daily flow. So I'm going to talk about Mercurial, which is a different. Git obviously is very popular. There is another one called Mercurial, which is pretty much is real nice for single developers and small teams. And so I've been using Mercurial for a number of years now, and it's just simpler and faster. You also have all of the different versions of your code base is all local on your computer, and it's easier to set up, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I tend to use. I'm going to focus specifically this time just on kind of like how you use it as a single developer. And like Charles said, the whole idea of a source control system is to be able to kind of take snapshots of your code at specific points in time, and then it allows you to then experiment and do different things, and then and not have to worry about ruining your code. If you're the kind of person who copies folders, project folders, and names them version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or copies a file and wants to try to something different, so you give it a new name, you're the perfect candidate for source control. It'll save you a lot of headaches, and it's just good stuff all around. I'm not going to get into anything complicated this time. I'm hoping to come back and do another version of this, talk more about some of the more advanced things you can do. But I'm just going to basically talk about how you just kind of set up your project and kind of the flow just to get into the habit of using source control. So source control UI has come a long way now, and I use Bitbucket is the site I use to host keep my code. And what's nice about that, you don't have to put your code up remotely. You can keep it all local if you want, but you kind of get a kind of a backup, which is kind of nice off of your computer once you kind of post it up to these sites. And obviously GitHub is the big daddy of that. But the thing about GitHub is that you can't have private repositories for free. So on Bitbucket, you can have unlimited private repositories, and for me, some of my projects are open, but a lot of my projects are just personal work for myself, or me just experimenting. So I really like the idea that I can have private repositories up on the server. And additionally, Bitbucket recently released their UI utility called Source Tree, and it is available for Windows and Macintosh. And it's a really, really nice tool. You just it's just another tool you put it in your tool belt, and you just use it to keep your code all up to date and safe. And so we're going to look at just kind of how we add a project into Source Tree, and then just look at a few of the different kind of things that you do to make this happen. So again, Source Tree app is the URL for the Source Tree, and you can also just punch in Source Tree into Google and it'll pop you right up. So usually the kind of the workflow you'd want to do is if you have a project, so I'm going to go ahead and in here I have this my project. This is just kind of a no project I just built here just for this example. And so if you're starting with your first project here, the first thing you want to do before you get too far is kind of get your basics in here, and then you want to add it immediately into your version control. And to do that, in this case, you're going to use I'm using Source Tree, and this is a little bookmark window. This is where you kind of store all of your different stuff, so you can have all of your projects in here. So it keeps them. If you want to organize them, you can just do it that way if you want. And over here, we would add a repository. So I'm going to click that, and we're creating a new one. So I'm going to hit Create Repository. And then here, it's asking for the destination. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And in my Corona Geek folder is my project. I'm going to open that, and then from here, I can add that folder into the repository. From here on, I'll just call it the repo. Here you can give your project a unique name if you want to, or just keep what it gives you, and then you create it. And what this does is this now has written some invisible files that you can't see here that kind of keep track of what's going on here with your different versions. So once you're in here, in this area here, you see it's got some little status here, and it's got a question mark with 4 files. So we double-click this project here, and then it's going to kind of open up this main UI, which is the kind of the project UI here. And you'll notice when you first check in the files, there's a bunch of question marks here. It's because even though you've created this new repo, you haven't done what's called a commit. And a commit is basically a snapshot. So it'll take your code at any specific point in time and create kind of this snapshot of it. So you can go back and forth if you need to. A repo, version control in general, is a lot like insurance. You don't want to have to use it, but you're happy it's there when you do need it. I've been using version control pretty religiously for the last 3 years, and I've only had to really use it to get me out of emergency about 3 times. So even though it seems like it takes extra work, eventually it just becomes habit, and you never know when you're going to need that. And over time, I've also found other good uses for it than just emergency recovery. It's really nice to be able to keep versions of your application that you can jump back to in time and have basically a perfect snapshot of any version of your app. And also, too, then you can create what's called new branches and still have your old stuff. We're not going to talk about branches this time, but maybe we'll get into that next time, hopefully. So to select all these files and commit them, I'm just going to click this checkbox. They're all checked in, and I click the commit button. And every time you make a commit, you have to give it some little message. And this is just a little note to kind of give a quick overview of kind of what you're committing. When you do a first-time commit, there's a couple different things you can do. A lot of people do a check-in in it. There's different ones you can do. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and use check-in, and then I commit this code. So now I've just created a snapshot of my current code base. So if I look here in my branches, there's always one branch called the default branch. And here is, once you can see here, this is my check-in. This is the default, what they call the tip is the tag, and this is kind of the most current working version of my code. Down here you kind of get a little overview of what happened on that commit, and in this case I've added these files. So now if I go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and open up my project now into Sublime, and we'll take a look at kind of how this works. So now I have my new project here, and this has all been committed. You can see here, you can see the invisible folder here in Sublime, so this is where Mercurial kind of saves its state and stuff like that. So if we wanted to just add something in here, let's just say, and this is going to be a very contrived example. We add a print statement in there, and we save it, and we would go back over here, and once we've changed the file, your Mercurial the UI will update and say, okay, you have changes that are uncommitted. In other words, you have changes that have not been taken a snapshot of. So if we want to commit that change, then we go to commit. And of course, you would obviously probably add some more code than just one line before you commit, but I'm just doing it as an example here. So we would commit that, and then it's going to ask us, what we're going to do. So we're just going to say, I use refactor a lot because I'm lazy, but you can be as descriptive as you want. And so once I check this in, now I've started creating this history of my work here. So you can see here, on this. I'm working on this. This is my new default now, and I've added this change here. And then here is my old. This is my first check-in. Kind of shows you history here. So I have this, and this is my current version. Yes.
Yeah, Chris. Does it handle graphic files?
Yes.
I'm working with a graphic programmer or a graphics person, and they're committing changes. And I like version 3. Does it handle that well?
It actually doesn't. Binary files in general are hard to kind of.
Yes, they are. That's why it was the
yeah.
source of my question.
Yeah. Often, those will just be kept separately on a separate, like a server or something, to have and you will have to deal with that separately. This is. These kind of control systems are much more used in a textual type of situation. Binary files are just hard to be able to tell the changes, basically, and that's what this is all about. It's checking the differences between two files and then figuring out kind of what's going on there. And so, yeah, that is a good point to bring up, because yes, it doesn't handle those well. You can obviously store them in your repo if you want. Your graphic files, but it's going to be difficult to kind of, if you run into an emergency situation, the system itself is going to have a hard time trying to rectify that for you.
Well, I have a follow-up question to that. So I think probably one of the popular ways to synchronize or share files these days is Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that. So, but I know Git apparently doesn't like Google Drive. It says something about, I think the other day it told me that I had something stored in Google Drive, and it was like, it will corrupt your code, basically. So have you had any trouble with that with Mercurial, or?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think probably one of the reasons, Git and Mercurial are different in a couple fundamental ways. And so Git is more server-based. It's not decentralized like Mercurial is. Also, because of the use of these invisible files and stuff, I'm sure that can create an issue if something doesn't get transferred over to an external storage system or Google Drive or whatnot. That's why I use the Bitbucket. And so on my service, I don't use my code or store my code on like Google Drive or anything like that. I put it all up in Bitbucket, and that way they keep it. Now, what's neat about Mercurial, though, is you can simply just zip up a folder and pass it on to somebody, and this is where it differs from Git in that it's decentralized. So I could zip up this folder and send it to you. You can make some changes to it, send it back to me, or even post it up on Google Drive as zipped or whatnot. I can pull it back down. I can run it in here through my project manager here, my source code manager, and I could do some merges if I need to, or whatever I need to do. So that's why Mercurial is generally better for like a single developer or a small team, maybe like 2 or 3 people. Obviously, when you get more people involved, it's nice to have that kind of server-driven platform, which Git does provide.
Yeah. Okay. I was just wondering if you had any recommendations for, like Dr. Burton was talking about, sharing those images and synchronizing them, and still being able to use the repo.
Yeah, I mean, you can store all that in your repo. So I could check images in. I could check that data in. It will upload it to Bitbucket in my case. Where it becomes problematic is that if you need to kind of go back through a revision, it's not so much about going back through revision. It's if you need to kind of fix an emergency problem, these version control systems can go through and kind of like figure out where the file changed and how to kind of fix it and make it all well again. We're not going to talk much about that this time, but that's where it kind of fails, because it's a binary file. It's much more difficult for it to kind of figure out what the differences is as opposed to some text.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
now, Chris, is the source tree tool that you're using here, is this a free resource, or?
Yes, all these things are free. That's the difference. GitHub, you can't have private repos. Again, if it doesn't matter to you, if your idea is just to be sharing the code, then no big deal. But for me, again, like I said, I have my own personal projects I'm working on and stuff like that, and I don't want people to see all my messy code. So private repo is nice.
Yeah, and I teach computer science classes. I've got a lot of students that especially beginning students, they rely very heavily upon tools like Dropbox or Google Drive. If you've got a pro account on Dropbox, I think you've got a little bit of versioning control that can work with images. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to be a professional programmer, I can't emphasize enough that Mercurial or a tool like this is essential for being able to find out and save yourself so much time if you're going to be serious about being a professional about this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And again, you know, there's the Git option too. This, again, just to reiterate, it's good for kind of single developers, and it's a good way to kind of introduce yourself to the idea of version control, because once you get into the Git world, it gets a little bit more complicated on how it works and stuff like that.
And Git can be confusing for somebody who's just getting started.
Yeah, it's a little esoteric.
Mercurial with this interface, that's easy to understand. That's easy to use.
Yeah.
And
Source Tree can work with either Git or Mercurial. If you're just beginning and if it's a single project, it doesn't matter if you use Mercurial or Git. Either works just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the key is that graphical interface.
Yeah, I mean that's nice. You know, it's for obviously it comes from a command line application, which I don't mind the command line, but I like to keep it to my server admin, and beyond that, then I'll just stick with the graphical stuff. So
yes.
So just to show, let me just go ahead. I'm just going to add another scene to this project here real quick, so we can look at how you can kind of do the version control stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and just save this scene 1. I'm just going to do a save as scene 2. Make that quick. And I'm going to do a hello scene 2 here, just so we have something a little bit different. And so, again, it's going to give me some changes here. I'm going to go ahead and tag this one. You can do tags, which is nice, because then you can start to create versions. So let's say before I commit these changes, I say, hey, you know what? Everything was working great on that last version. I want to tag this so I know where that is in my timeline here of changes. Because if you're not very descriptive, you may not know where that was exactly when everything was working perfectly. So I can go ahead and tag that, and now I'm going to go ahead and commit this new file. And as you can see, it hasn't been checked in yet, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. We'll commit that guy, and I'm just going to say added scene 2. And now we have this new most updated project here, and I have my scene 2 here, my hello scene, etc. And then I decide, you know what, I need to go back to this version 01 and re-export it out for whatever reason, because I have to add a new license or something to it. So I can simply double-click this, and once that happens, then everything just reverses in time. So over here in my Sublime, scene 2 no longer exists anymore. I'm now working. This is kind of, in a lot of ways, this is kind of just a way to choose different, kind of files of different projects. Kind of, it's all one project, but they have their different parts in history. So now I'm back to. This actually isn't supposed to exist, so he wants to be saved. I'm just going to throw him out so we don't see him here. I'm back, and here's my scene 1 again. I'm back to where I was there. I could do whatever I needed to do, and then if I want to jump back forward in time, I can double-click that, and then now I'm instantly back where I was before now with my scene 2 that I had created in that version. So this is just, again, we're not going to get into merging and branching this time. But this shows you the general concept of how you add a project and how you continually commit a project to every time that you want to add new stuff to it. So if you say, okay, I got a really clean version of 01, I'm going to go ahead and start a new scene, make a bunch of changes, blah, blah, blah. If it totally doesn't work, you can revert back to this version if you want to. All you got to do is select it again. And you can just leave the other stuff there. You don't need to delete it or anything, because once you start making changes, you can recommit it, and it's going to figure it all out for you and put it back up here at the top. When you do that, it's going to start to get into merging, and again, we'll cover that next time or whenever there's another chance, hopefully. But what I do want to show is how we now add this into the remote repository. So this is all just happening still locally on your desktop. So if you go over here to remotes, you can say add remote, and this is where we interface with the Bitbucket website itself. So over here, it's asking for the remote project, so I'm going to hit this little world over here. And from here, you can create a new repo down here with this button, and we can give it whatever name we want. So let's just call it my project. I think that's what we called what the other one is. Here's where you can decide whether you want it to be private or public. And so I can uncheck that, and it'll be private. And then what's neat is that this application source tree does support both Mercurial and Git. So if you do want to go the Git route, you can totally do that. I'm going to create the repository. Now this has created that up on the Bitbucket site, and then I have to go through and find it. Here was my project, and we'll go with that. Got all set up here. We hit OK, and OK again, and now we'll have our remote here. So what's neat is you can do a bunch of local changes, and even before pushing it to the remote. But you'll see this, it's got this little number 1 here. It's telling me that I have changes that I can push to the remote. So I'm first going to jump back to my most current tip of my project. And when I do that, I should be able to push up to my remote. So I'm going to hit push. It's going to show me the files that are going to go to that repo. And then I hit OK. And then on my Bitbucket, let's go ahead and do that. And over here, now I've just pushed that up to the website here on my account. So here it is. Here's my project now. So now I have not only a version-controlled copy on my desktop, but I also have a backup of this project now on Bitbucket. So, and you can do a lot of the same functionality here on Bitbucket as well if you want to do branches and things like that. I tend to do everything in on the UI here. If you do change things here, then you're going to have to get into situations where you have to pull those changes, do updates, etc. So it's kind of good to kind of keep it to have control that all in one area. And then from here, you can, if you're out in the field and you're like, oh my God, I need my code with me, you can come and grab it here, and because it is a Mercurial repo, you can keep it, it's decentralized, you can play with it locally, and then it's real easy to merge it back into your other source. So that's all I'm going to cover for this time. Just it gives you the kind of basic walkthrough of how to set up your project, and I'm recommending this tool if you're starting. You can do it all through the command line as well, and I'm recommending Bitbucket for the free private repositories. And that's about it for that. And then later on, hopefully we can get into some of the more advanced stuff like branching and merging and things like that.
Now, Chris, I've not used the source tree software, which looks fascinating. Actually, I've got it downloading right now and installing on my Mac. I assume there's a version for the PC?
Yes, it's cross-platform.
Okay, great.
For me, I
tie this in with Bitbucket and
yeah, I think you can actually.
Dropbox.
The last time I looked at it, I think you can actually even use this tool to tie into GitHub too. So I think they're kind of like just using it everywhere.
Yeah, that's what the advertisement on the App Store said, was that it'll tie into GitHub as well.
Cool. Yeah.
So if you want to open source it.
Yeah.
GitHub has its own application as well, so it's also free. So if you want to use GitHub, you can use their application.
Yeah, they have theirs. Does theirs support Mercurial too?
No, they only support GitHub, yes. But it's specifically for GitHub, so it has more control over it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that if you're a little further along and you understand this stuff more, definitely do the GitHub thing. If you're really open sourcing it, if you're just starting and you want to keep it privatized, I think Mercurial is a nice option for that.
Mm-hmm. And about creating new repositories, I usually go other way around. I first create a repository on the Bitbucket website, and then I hit a button and clone it in Source Tree. So it Source Tree pops up on my screen, and you can select the folder where you want to place it, and I put my files there. And for me, useful things about Source Tree is that I can check myself when I commit for, like, I'm working on a big project. I was like working for several hours. I've changed like 20 files. and when I commit, I check that every change in my files makes sense, and that I don't break anything suddenly, that I don't leave any typos, that I don't leave any comments, that I don't leave any debug information in my code. So yeah, I always go through my changed files in Source Tree UI, and when I'm working on some projects, I tend to I don't know, change files, delete them, change them significantly, and later on I find myself, oh, what was it before? And I don't need to check out the entire repository. I just want to see this specific file. So I'll go to Source Tree, and there's quick view options that you can navigate to the commit you want to check with, click it, find the file you've changed, and you can open it in using quick view without downloading the whole commit to you locally.
Right.
So,
yeah, I've definitely
used
that before too. Go and grab something that I've erased down the line just to find some code. And good tips.
Mm-hmm.
Good tips.
Well, I tell you, I like that you pointed out the fact that you're committing changes and then pushing them, because that was to me that was one of the hardest things to understand in the beginning. I was like, well, I committed it, didn't I? I mean, and then to realize that, oh, well, you still have to push it up to the server, but you know, once you realize that there's a desktop copy and then there's a copy on the server, then it becomes to make sense, right? You've committed the changes, but you haven't shared them with anyone yet, so you need
actually a Source Tree simplifies it a little. There's a special checkbox that you can tick, and with one, when you commit, it will automatically push all the changes you want. So it's like one click, do all stuff. So
yeah,
it's also useful.
I didn't show that. You're right. There's when you're committing, right underneath the commit message, there's a little checkbox you can click and then just up it at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm sure that depends on what your situation is, right, or what your workflow is like, or whatever. But yeah, it's nice to at least have that option. I've been using GitHub's interface, and it's nice as well. But I like the fact that Source Tree's playing with plays well with others. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's like everybody has different choices and tools, and this is just one option. And
yeah,
nice.
No, I like that. Well, I'm looking forward to the discussion when we get into branching, because that's one of the topics that I think is going to be really beneficial for people who want to experiment with different code bases or whatever. Like Sergey was saying earlier, I want to play with this, but I don't want to. I want to be able to figure out, now what did I do? And I have to be able to go back or be able to merge, because I know that with some of the stuff, you can branch something and then you can merge specific changes back into the main branch, and I think at that point that's the point where I get it's a little blurry for me, And
I think remember is that to not be too branchy is what they say. You don't need to. Those are very specific use cases for branching, because you can actually get away with a lot of that experimentation, just making sure that you're committing those different snapshots, because you can roll back a commit. So if you take a snapshot, you make a bunch of changes, you're going crazy, you break your whole code base, you can revert back a commit, and you'll be right back to where you started. It's like the big undo button. So maybe I mean, not to get into it, but so maybe you have one or two branches, but you don't have you're not some sort of. Branches are usually used for more bigger version
control. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense, because I was trying to think of it as more of a bunch of variations, and that seems like that would be very confusing to manage.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
You need branches when you have something like an open library or an open project that everybody can work on, and you have a stable version, the stable branch, and your development branch when you do all your development. And then when the development is done, you just merge your development branch with your main branch, the stable one, and it becomes stable. Or it's useful for when you're working with someone on a project. So it's like you have one code base, every developer has its own branch, and every developer has its own task, and when the task is over, all the changes are merged together into the main branch. So this is the use for branches.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, being able to keep everybody working all at the same time, but be able to split them off into their own branch and then merge those back in. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's probably the most common use case. Okay, well, great. Well, hopefully we'll talk about that again soon, and we'll put links to the show notes for Source Tree and GitHub and all that kind of stuff like that. Did you have anything that? I mean, I don't think there was any source code or anything that we needed to share for this, right? Not an example or anything. But
one little project.
Okay. I wanted to mention lynda.com. They're not a sponsor of the show or anything, but if you've ever been there, let me share my screen here. They have a bunch of training videos, and you can get access to them for like $25 a month, which is, I think, stupid simple for being able to access an education on a bunch of this stuff. So they have a course on the fundamentals of software version control, and if you're interested in that sort of thing, it goes pretty deep. So there's they kind of get into the history of things and where version control tracking came from and how it's kind of evolved over time, and then they get into some of the more modern things like Mercurial and GitHub and stuff like that, and they even talk about things like Microsoft Team Foundation Server and all that kind of stuff. So you can kind of jump around if you want. So if you're just interested in Mercurial, then you can kind of go over there and watch those videos. Or if you want to kind of know the history of things, you can go and just watch those pieces. You don't have to watch all the videos, but they're pretty good. And I like their player. They have an option where you can speed it up. So if you want to go 1 or 2, 2 speed or whatever, you want to speed up the video, you can kind of zip through the content pretty quick and refresh yourself or get to the pieces that you want pretty quickly. And they also have a transcript on every video, so you can search. So if you're looking, if you know exactly what you're looking for by keyword, then you can search the whole course, or you can search a video, and that's pretty helpful as well. So
true story. I created the first lynda.com video library software.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this site is based off of code that I built for them a number of years ago.
Oh, sweet.
That's awesome.
That is cool.
But I built it in ASP, and we did QuickTime in ASP, and then I did all of their director DVD frameworks, and I taught classes there. I actually have a CD-ROM on there, too, for Flash. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I'm going to go look that up.
Good friends with Linda. She's cool.
Oh, awesome. Well, I love the site. I mean, just for $25, you can't beat it. I mean, I've joined and canceled my membership a number of times just because I'm like, well, I'll get busy, and I'm like, I don't have time, and then
when we created it too, the bandwidth was expensive. And
I can imagine.
We were losing money for a long time on that, but now, of course, it's just a cash cow.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, it's kind of funny to watch all these other sites pop up about around training, like like Treehouse, Team Treehouse, and all these other guys. And with Lynda, you can go on there. It doesn't matter what you want to learn. You want to learn Photoshop? Go ahead. You want to learn source control software? Go ahead. If you want to learn accounting or how to motivational speaking, it's like
yeah.
And they're really, really, really well done courses. So. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they're very meticulous about training and teaching. Lynda's very good, really, really good at that.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, there you go, lynda.com. Go check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes. And there, you can, if you want to learn more about the source control software, then go out there and check it out. Well, I think we're all out of time for today. So we were going to talk about some of the Apple stuff that's going to be coming out, but I think you can probably go out there and find most of it. I'll throw in some links into the show notes just to some of the things that we've seen come up around NFC and Samsung put out a new smartwatch that's it doesn't need the phone. It's basically a phone on your wrist. So we'll put links to all those in the show notes, so go check those out. And then next week, hopefully, we'll be back here. I think Ed Marina was working on some material around OOP, and he was kind of follow up on that discussion that we had about creating display objects using object-oriented programming. And I think he's got some good stuff to share. So hopefully, we'll get that on next week, and maybe even do a little bit more of this source control conversation. So, all right. Well, guys, thanks for joining me. Thanks for being here. We'll be back next Monday, 12 p.m. Pacific, talking all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. until then, have a great week and happy coding.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye.